the word supply advocate is unfamiliar to most of us. It was to me when I took on the role, and in fact I didn't have a job description when I started, so I had to make the role up as I go along. And many of us in the sustainability space, as you've heard from Emma, are all too familiar with that. So there's two words that describe my role. One is celebration, the other one is empowerment. My role is basically to celebrate some of Australia's best technologies that deliver solutions to either saving resources, removing pollution, or delivering efficiency, clean tech, as we call it in America. The second focus is empowerment. You wouldn't believe how many entrepreneurs lack some of the fundamental skills to help grow their business and commercialize their wonderful ideas. So I help to deliver on fundamental skills around pitching, around understanding basic valuations of IP and all these other commercial tools that you need in your kit bag to go from A to B. Now, the best way of establishing in your own mind how that role works, and just picking up on some of the wonderful insights delivered by Sam and also from the other panel members, is that the role of supplier advocacy, and I think much of what we're talking about today, I illustrate using a Sydney Harbour Bridge. And we're all familiar with the Sydney Harbour Bridge. There's an on-ramp and an off-ramp. On the on-ramp, we have a lot of technologies and wonderful clean tech businesses, some of which are still stuck going around the roundabout before they're even reaching the on-ramp. On the off-ramp of the bridge, we have customers, Westpacs, Lendleases, a whole range of corporate entities, wonderfully empowered, have great intentions, want to actually reach out and connect with some of these businesses if they're permitted to do so. So in that Sydney Harbour Bridge analogy, supply advocates are largely about helping roughly 1,000 small businesses get from one end of the bridge to the other end of the bridge. Now, of course, the challenge is we only have one lane on the bridge in Australia. And it will take roughly 12 to 15 years for those businesses to get across the bridge. And across that bridge, there are tolls, there are bottlenecks. You will engage with some government programs to access grants, maybe R&D tax credits. You might even pitch for venture capital. You might even do an IPO when it comes back into fashion at the back end of the bridge. Now, the challenge in Australia is that we have a lane full of great technologies at different stages. And I still have 70% of those 1,000 stuck at pilot scale demonstration, which is really at the first sort of stone column of the bridge. The main challenge we have is how do we encourage our corporates on the demand side, at the other end of the bridge, the off-ramp, to step onto the bridge. And it does actually require a lot of innovation in new structures and models. I'll give you an example. As Sam reminded us, fiduciary duties very often stop major corporations from taking risk outside of what shareholders will permit. But a company like Lendlease sets up a venture capital fund. That venture capital fund means they can step 2/3 of the way onto the bridge, engage some of those wonderful technologies, and help to bring them back across. The innovation we need in my space, and from what I see, and in Australia, is not so much around the technology, it's actually innovation that allows us to permit some of those businesses to step onto the bridge to help some of those great ideas get across that one lane quicker. And in my job, I'm there to basically broker those conversations and also to build extra lanes on that Sydney Harbour Bridge. So with that said, what do I see from my perspective for yourselves? Because I think you have a very important role to play. And Sam set the scene very elegantly because she referred to the lens. IAG applied a risk lens. And I think for us in the sustainability community, we have at least 4 lenses that we can wear and which we can look through and identify a problem and engage people on. And sometimes we, I think, let ourselves down. We perhaps might use the political lens too much. We might use the corporate social responsibility lens too much because Sam reminded us that a lot of what we're talking about here is actually economic reform, and we need to apply more of the economic lens in the conversations we have. And this is not new. Economic reform, whether it's carbon pricing, climate change, whether it's Y2K, GST, GFC, anti-money laundering, all economic reform usually has a number of common denominators. You always have early adopters. 5% of our Australian corporates will be early adopters on every single one of those issues. Now, the difference is that with sustainability, climate change, it's not a Y2K, it's not here today, gone tomorrow. It is actually a major piece of economic reform that affects so many different aspects of our business and our communities that we need fundamentally very different models. And I think the renewable energy sector is leading a lot of the change that we need to see. And to some extent, we are developing a new market through that. Mm-hmm. Can I continue? Mm-hmm. Okay. And that new market is a little bit like, I don't know, moving from landline to mobile phones, moving from typing pools to desktop computers. And also the entertainment sector is a great example. I mean, we all love going to the movies. We also all love having a DVD at home where we can put on our slippers and, you know, have control of switching it on and off and make the kettle and tea and stuff like that. Let's call the movies centralized entertainment. Let's call the DVD at home decentralized entertainment. Now, centralized entertainment, we're using technology from the turn of the century, 1900s. You know, it still works. It's massively reformed and it's changed and it's come a long way. But it still gives us what we want as consumers, as the community. It gives us a big picture experience, which is why we go to the movies, perhaps. But of course, if you look at decentralized entertainment, we've come a massive long way. We've had Dad getting out his movie projector 30 years ago, which we loved or hated, depending on, you know, what it was about. We then had video, and of course with video, we all knew that beta was the way to go. It was the best technology, but VHS won because of marketing and other things. Then we had DVD, and DVD was fantastic because we'd already been educated on CD. And so we accepted that straight away. And now we have Blu-ray, and it keeps on changing and changing and changing. So I think we're dealing with two very different markets on a lot of what we see. And the levels of innovation and what we experience will be driven by us. Because us as consumers are still driven by convenience, reliability, and price. And if we can somehow understand exactly and articulate through our organizations, through our communities, what it is that we need in terms of experience, then we will continue to drive change, and government will continue to back that change.